fun. Wonderful. Thank you, Sönke. And I'm happy to be here today. It's really a very unusual situation, but I'm in a good mood and I'm really looking forward to take you along and to show you our hidden champions in UCS4. I'm Nico Gulden and I'm product manager at Univention, and I will give you the highlights of UCS4 software management. So get started. We are starting. Well, the software management of UCS Corporate Server is, apart from the further development towards UCS 5.0, one of the main parts, developmental work of Univention. Minor features, app updates, bug and security fixes and project needs are important. Furthermore, we will test app updates automatically and release those. And within the last 12 months, we had 436 errata updates and 200 app updates which have been released. And in the errata updates have always been released as a bundle in the weekly updates. And for 11 years, these updates had been a topic for me. And it's really surprising to me to see how much is done within a year at Univention. And I would like to show you new apps and 5 champions in my annual update. Last year we had 8 new apps. We have the SAM Solution Crust, then the Enterprise Edition of OnlyOffice, then the Open Office Jixi, then the Open Matrix Messaging Solution Element for the front end and Synapse for the server backend, then the Preview Univention Portal 5.0, then KPS UCI at school, and Bitwarden. With regard to video conference and messaging solution, administrators can now use 2 different solutions from the App Center. This means they've got a bigger choice as to what they would like to use, and they can then pick whatever is matching their requirements best. Let's start with champion number 1, app hook scripts. For administrators and projects, there might be some recurring tasks that have to be done manually for project leads and administrators, and part of the functionality can get lost if these manual steps are not done after specific app updates. An organization, for example, uses specific font in documents which is not available as a standard in Office updates. But a simple order can be placed in the app, or a specific SSL certificate is used in the app for communication. So automation helps to forget recurring tasks that need to be done. And this is why we have the hook scripts now. Administrator can now have app management like app updates, where they place specific scripts which are then executed. For example, the front package can be post-installed in the Docker packages. Scripts only need to be written once and placed once, and the app Center will then execute them, for example, after an update or after installation or after the removal of an app. Champion number 2 are performance improvements in UMC management system and in the portal. The management Univention management console usually runs as a single process. In larger environments and at higher loads, this process meets its limits. For example, once there are registry applications, and these limits can then be moved towards higher numbers if several processes are used to control this. We did a lot in the background, but there are 2 new UCR variables that allow you to set these. So you configure at that point how many processes UCS management system should be started as a server as well as web server. And the rule of thumb is that the number of parallel processes should not increase or exceed, the number of CPU cores. I would like to give you an example. Here on this chart, you see the load tests at the portal and as the UMC in our testing environment. And you see very nicely that at the same request load, which is at the top, and the same number of users, the lower, of course, the response times are stable. In the test, there were 20,000 applications or registrations within 50 minutes. And you can extrapolate this, and you could say, okay, if you have 8 CPU cores, you get 8 requests per second. And if you then scale this horizontally to 4 servers and have a pre-scaled element, then you have almost 2,000 requests or applications or registrations per minute. And this is important for organizations who've got several thousands of users who regularly all will register within a short period of time and thus generate loads. Champion number 3 are new possibilities to adapt pages for login and self-service to user needs, as you see it here for the school board network Fulda. So, for example, you can open a window password forgotten, and you can also change names. Then there are also further adaptations for the user self-services. So organizations with many users really benefit of these adaptations because they can guide their users and improve recognition. These and a lot of other adaptations are available through the self-service app that you get at the App Center. Champion number 4 is covering this large area of single sign-on, and there are a number of additions. UCS has been supporting for quite some time the OpenID connector provider app. That is, there's an identity provider for apps with regard to the OpenID Connect standard, and thus allows flexibility in identity management. So for the users, there are 3 mentionable improvements. First of all, the OpenID provider Connect has been expanded, that XAML instead of IDEP is used, and Ingo has already mentioned this morning. For the single sign-on registration, there is always a XAML authentication, which means that the user has one registration and uses XAML and OpenID Connect and can use the different services depending which standard the other end is supporting. Secondly, should the password have been expired in single sign-on, then the user can set it directly. And thirdly, users can work on contact information and change them themselves if they have been signed on. Administrators will only set which attributes of users must be specified during registration. And for administrators, there's also one change or one expansion, and that is administrators can now define user groups. So users who are part of this user group have a certain registration right for a specific app. In the past, you had to set it for each user individually. In the past, you could also have a multi-ad, but now you can do it for one specific group. And then it applies to all the users of this group. And this is interesting for organizations who mainly organize their users in groups. Champion number 5 is referring to self-registration of new users. Since the 5th patch level release of UCS 4, they can do so that by themselves if the administrator has said this. And administrators can also say which attributes have to be filled in during registration. And the verification mail and can also be adapted. So for single sign-on as well for self-registration in the whole user self-service, there has been a lot done within this field of adaptation. So users, for example, can create their own account or delete this own account. However, in order to make it usable, it has to be activated via a link from an email that the UCS system sends out. And you know this procedure from many different other services on the internet. At the end, I would like to mention a few tidbits. Let's first have a look at the synchronization of UCS and iActive connector. The mapping of attributes of UCS, LDAP, and Samba could be adapted. And for the AD connector, we have now allowed it to make this possible in a similar way. So depending on your environment and the needs, you can now adapt this. Second is that in this single sign-on link of services, SAML also can add attribute mappings. For example, the mail primary address, as you know it from LDAP, can be linked to email in an app. For example, apps which expect specific attributes in unchangeable keys, and this mapping allows to implement such adaptation and also to allow for such a link. Then we continue with the App Center, where prior to the installation of apps, certain checks are done and certain information is provided. The resources, for example, that are required for an app are more clearly to be seen, and the user guidance was simplified, significantly simplified, and also shortened. And the last change is cookies. Well, we all know these cookies from the internet, and in particular within the EU, we have these cookie banners that we're always confronted with. And because of the different uses of UCS, it is a must that the UCS portal allows you to show specific cookie banners. For example, open user groups have access to a portal. Administrators can activate this separately, and also the text and the contents of such cookie banners can be adapted. Okay, so these were our hidden champions and the highlights of UCS4. I've shown them to you here. I hope that you can find appropriate solutions for your needs, and I'm available for questions and will also join the breakout session in a moment.